So sell shit you don't need. Don't produce shit you don't need. If you're my frame rate's kind of crappy right now, actually, because I've been trying to clear out a lot of boulders that I have. I've got like 12,000 boulders I'm trying to get rid of. And by getting rid of, I mean making them into crafts and then giving them for free to the humans when they come by, which is probably going to take me the next 40 years, but we'll get rid of them eventually. I just have to be really careful with my production right now. Second, and major thing that causes hangups is pathfinding issues. Dwarves don't like crawling over top of each other. So if everybody's crawling over top of each other, pathfinding issues happen. Certain jobs are more intensive on frame rate than others. Channeling, for example, is really frame rate intensive from what I found. So like if I say, I'm just going to pause the game, go down here and channel, I'm just going to cancel this right after I do it, but channel that, my frame rate will drop by like 10. So certain jobs are pretty frame rate intensive. Mass hauling is pretty frame rate intensive. Using wheelbarrows can fix that a little bit because then not as many dwarves are moving stuff, or using minecarts is also a fix for that. No, I mean, that's 2,500 isn't the problem, Anonymous. That's not the problem. Like, for example, this fortress has like 40,000 constructed blocks in it. Especially once stuff has been constructed, it's not an issue. And if it's in a stockpile, it's not an issue. It's an issue when it's loose and sitting, because then the game is tracking it. So the game actually sort of removes objects the second they're put into a stockpile. Tarn was talking about this when I spoke with him once about frame rate. But when an item is put into a stockpile, it removes it slightly and stops tracking its density and physics. So if an item is in a stockpile, it's not going to be as big of a hamper on the game's memory. But like as an example, this is more obvious actually if I show the whole screen. But like this is, oopsies, that's the wrong button. That's the right button. This is the game, right? So if I hit Z and I go to stockpile and I scroll down, I'm holding the down arrow, but it's not doing anything because it's trying to figure out where all of the blocks are in the world. The red ones are the built ones. The white ones, so the 504, are the unbuilt blocks that I have in the fort right now. The game is still figuring it out. It's not responding, right? It'll figure it out. It's just going to take a minute. Atom Smashers work, or you can trade stuff. I'm still holding the down arrow. It's working on it. There you go. So, like, that's the sort of thing that starts to happen. The game has to figure out where every item is. So a lot of people do things like they'll just leave things on infinite repeating. Another thing that causes problems is people lock doors. If like a cat gets stuck behind a door, a door. So if there's two doors in your fort, right? One of them is locked and one of them is not. A dwarf walks up to the locked door. They see that it's locked. They turn around and then they go find the unlocked door. Cat is stupid. If cat or dog or other livestock walks up to that locked door, they'll just sit there with a question mark indefinitely and wreck your frame rate. Stuff like that. Or like if you send a squad of dwarves out to invade somebody, and then they come back, and then you send them back out and your frame rate mysteriously dies, probably when they came back, especially if it's a very forested fortress, one of them spawned up on the trees, and it's in the trees, and can't path back off the map, which happens very commonly. So if you're sending out raids or something, and suddenly your frame rate dies, check to see if anybody hasn't left for the raid yet, because odds are really good they're in a tree. It's like small shit like that. Like, it's like things like flowing water don't impact your frame rate at all. I find things like flowing lava as well don't impact your frame rate at all. What does impact your frame rate is flowing water blocking the pathing of a dwarf getting from A to B. So if a dwarf is trying to go somewhere and there's flowing water in the way and they can't get around it, that will fuck your frame rate. A dwarf stuck somewhere will fuck your frame rate. There's lots of small dumb things that are all avoidable. I've never had a case of frame rate death in a fortress that I haven't been able to fix. And also, I don't get that question very often. Usually I just have people like claiming that I'm lying or cheating or something in text and not in the chat, and then they never show up in the streams or watch the VODs, or they believe me.